Hello, everyone. Welcome to our monthly YouTube show. We'll tell you what we're reading from the Waltham Public Library. Once again, my colleagues and I will be telling you about some of the titles that we've been reading and enjoying, or not. If you have titles that you're also reading and enjoying, or not, please let us know by including them in the chat if you're watching us live, or the comments if you're watching us on demand. You can also join us on Zoom on Monday, October 26th at 7 p.m. to share some titles. You may request any of the titles that we are discussing today for contactless pickup at the library. Many of them are also available through our ebook subscriptions on Overdrive or the Libby app and our Hoopla. My name is Laura Bernheim, and I'm the head of reference at the library. Joining me are my colleagues Liz Rior, Greg Carter, and Louise Goldstein. We have several events and programs coming soon for patrons of all ages, some of which are on our YouTube channel, which, if you're watching this, you're watching our YouTube channel. Hit like and subscribe. Check our events calendar on walthampubliclibrary.org for future programs. This will also include any Zoom links and or contact information. Following us on Zoom today, for instance, at 4 p.m. is our Kids Lego Club. You can grab the Zoom link for that on our Children's Activity page on the library Facebook page. We also have multiple virtual book clubs every month. You can find the meeting dates, titles, and Zoom links by clicking on book clubs or events on our library website. And once again, last but never ever least, please consider supporting the Friends of the Waltham Public Library. We have been able to continue offering library services and programs for the entirety of the pandemic. And a lot of that is thanks to our Friends group. They have support and pay for this very Zoom account, which allows us to do this type of programming. They've also supplied a lot of the fun things that the children's room are doing, such as craft supplies. We really, truly do have the best of friends, and we couldn't do it without your support. So thank you, and please continue supporting that. Without further ado, we are going to start our program, and my colleague Liz is going to start us off.
Hi, everybody. Hello. How are you? Awesome. Great. Okay. So my slides all have sort of a theme because it's October and I love horror. So this is all sort of horror weird stuff. So my first book is The Yeti Files by Kevin Sherry. So I am a huge fan of Bigfoot lore. I have multiple Bigfoot bumper stickers on my car, and I don't know if they actually exist, but I desperately want to believe. So this book is a fun middle grade chapter book, and it's about Blizz Richards, a Yeti who has to travel to the Pacific Northwest for two reasons. First, the Bigfoot family is having a reunion, and there hasn't been one in a long time. Second, Blizz needs to make sure that the world's most awful cryptozoologist, George Vanquist, doesn't show up and reveal the secrets of the big feet to the world. This is a fun book with really engaging and detailed illustrations that would be great for any kid or adult with a love of cryptids and a sense of adventure. Next, I have Clown in a Cornfield by Adam CESARE. So after the traumatic death of her mother, Quinn Maybrook and her father moved from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to the quiet farming town of Kettle Springs, Missouri. Quinn just wants a fresh start and a quiet senior year, but Kettle Springs has other plans. While attending a party at an abandoned barn with her new friends from school, Quinn enters a fight for her life against someone or something dressed like Friendo, the town's creepy clown mascot. This is a fun, young adult crossover horror novel for fans of creepy clowns, freaky fields, and scary slashers. Next, I have Tiny Nightmares, edited by Lincoln Michelle and Nadzeli Nito. This collection of very short horror stories is perfect for when you need a thrill or a chill, but don't have the time or attention span to focus on a novel-length book. Each story is just a few pages long, and it covers things that are more like traditional seasonal Halloween scary topics like witches and vampires, and then the more cerebral and sort of intellectual scares that are presented by things such as racism, poverty, etc. It features a short story from one of my favorite authors, Stephen Graham Jones, and his work has been talked about on this program before. And I recommend it to anyone who wants some bite-sized horror this Halloween season. My next book is The Low, Low Woods by Carmen Maria Machado and illustrated by Donnie. So Carmen Maria Machado is another one of my favorite authors. If you haven't read her recent book, In the Dream House, please drop everything and read it the minute that this program ends, unless you're going to Lego Club. So The Low, Low Woods is her newest release. It is a graphic novel, and it's being released through Joe Hill's Hill House Comics imprint on the DC label for comics fans. So it's two friends, Elle and V. They live in Shudder to Think, which is a slowly dying coal town in Pennsylvania, where the mines underneath the town are literally on fire. But people are still living there because life's great. Also, there happen to be skinless men and rabbits with human eyes living in the woods around the time, and weird things keep happening that make people lose their memories, and nobody knows what's going on. This graphic novel kind of throws you into a weird world with rules that you don't know and aren't really explained to you, which normally I don't like, but in this case, I think because the illustrations are so wonderful, I love it. Like, I can't wait for the next volume to come out. It's super creepy. It's great. I love it. And my last book is Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bastarrica. This book, I read it and I could not think about anything but this book for days. Like, I had to buy a copy of it so I could go and look at it over and over and over again. And this book is very disturbing. It comes with like every trigger warning I could possibly imagine, but I cannot recommend it enough. It is so good. So Tender is the Flesh is set in a near future dystopia where cannibalism is not only legal, but some humans, referred to as special meat, are factory farmed. So people are being raised to be slaughtered and then fed to other people, and everyone knows about it. It's not like a Soylent Green situation where no one knows that Soylent Green is people. It's like people know that special meat is people. It's messed up. So this very disturbing novel follows Marcos, an employee at a processing plant for the aforementioned special meat. He's having a rough time. His wife has left him. His father has increasingly severe dementia. And he is really starting to not be jazzed with his job of working for a people slaughtering plant. So when a business associate gives him a live specimen of premium special meat and says, go for it, do whatever you want, Marcos starts to confront the inherent evils of a society where people are raised to be eaten. And I should note, in this world, you're not allowed to like make friends with the special meat. Like, that is against law, and you will then be slaughtered and processed and served to other folks. So do not read this book if you are squeamish at all, because it's super gross. It's like The Jungle by Upton Sinclair on steroids. Or if you're really a big fan of capitalism, you also probably shouldn't read this book because it's going to make you mad. If you love leftist politics, it's going to be great. If you don't, you will definitely have some problems. But it's so good. Like, I have not had a book affect me like this one for years. So anyways, thought I'd end it on a real happy note. And now I'm going to throw it over to Laura, and we'll see what she's been reading.
Okay, wow. Yeah, those books sound really creepy, Liz. But I'm intrigued. I love Carmen Maria Machado, so I do want to check out that graphic novel. The others, we'll see. So my books, let me just get this up. Okay. So my first book is Beach Read by Emily Henry. And if you have been watching our show since we started back in August, you probably have figured out I appreciate a good, as in good, romance. And I've really enjoyed a lot of the recent romance titles. I think modern romance has really just come into its own. Last month, I mentioned You Had Me at Hola, which I adored. And immediately upon finishing that one, I started another recently published romance. And I'm not going to share the title because I completely despised it. And I don't want to be mean on YouTube. And, but spoiler alert, if you come to our meeting on Monday night, I may mention it. So anyway, after reading that, it was so refreshing after reading that unnamed disaster to come across Beach Read, which I very much liked. Upon the death of her father, romance/women's fiction author January learns that her father had a mistress and a secret life, and she inherits a house that he had owned while rendezvousing with his mistress. And the house is next to, coincidentally, a college acquaintance of hers, as well as a writing rival named Augustus, AKA Gus. And he writes what publishers are deeming as literary fiction. They don't deem hers as literary fiction. The two reconnect and they decide to try writing in each other's style. Gus and January have an adult relationship. Imagine that, a mature relationship in which they communicate. Imagine that. And there is just a lot of discussion about really how easily the romance genre and women's fiction in general are dismissed in literary circles and by publishers. So there's a lot of meta commentary in here, and I just, again, really appreciate it. Anyone who really does like romance, I definitely think this book is a must read. Oops, and my computer just did an update noise. I don't know if that came out, hopefully not. My next book is Parachutes by Kelly Yang. I actually listened to this on audio. I was narrated by two narrators, Cassie Simone and Carissa Vacker, respectfully. Trigger warning, this book does contain storylines about high school students experiencing sexual harassment and sexual assault. So I think this could be a difficult read. For some, this book just made me so angry, not because it was a bad book. In fact, it was a very good book. But because of how the main characters are treated, especially after reporting the harassment and assault. And of course, sadly, I think that's what makes the book so realistic. I have never been, when listening to a book, I would listen to it while walking and I would get enraged. I'm getting enraged now, just even recounting it. So Claire Wong, who lives in Shanghai, she moves to LA to live with Danny De La Cruz. So she's one of the glasses Danny is with the bun in her hair, and Danny's mother in Los Angeles in order to attend a prestigious private school, which Danny is attending on a full scholarship. The alternating voices between the two girls really give you a sense of what both Danny and Claire are dealing with at school. The book takes on a lot of very heavy topics, in addition to the sexual harassment and assault. It really talks about classism, xenophobia, sexism, and rape culture in general, especially at institutions. It's a very powerful book, but again, a hard read or listen in my case. For further context, I really do recommend watching on YouTube. There's a conversation with author Laurie Halse Anderson, the author of Speak, with which this book has been compared. And she's speaking with Kelly Yang. The link is in the description. And again, a warning, that conversation can be very difficult to watch and listen to at times. And it's about an hour. So you may have to, I actually had to watch it in parts. So just to let you know that. My third book is Opposite of Always by Justin A. Reynolds. I liked this book. I was a little nervous about it when I read the description. Jack meets Kate at a party. This is the description, and then has to keep going back in time to prevent her from dying. I'm not a fan of premises like that. I feel like they were probably clever the first time a book or movie had that, but I feel like it happens a lot. However, there was praise in the cover from both Angie Thomas and Becky Albertalli. both teen authors that I really respect and love. And I thought, you know what, Angie and Becky are not going to steer me wrong. And they didn't, for the most part, or they didn't at all, I should say. The book was quite enjoyable and fast-paced. The side characters, including Jack's two best friends and his parents, are compelling and well-rounded. I always appreciate when adults are well-developed in teen novels or in children's books. Sometimes they're not very well-developed as characters. My one critique, however, criticism I should say, is that I felt that Kate herself could have been much more well-developed as a character. I felt like she didn't have a lot of agency or say in her medical treatment. And in according to some other user reviews, I'm not the only one who felt that way. I do like her a lot as a character. I would have liked to see her get the same development as his other friends did, especially considering the premise. For the most part, though, I really do think this is a different take on the time travel to save someone's story, and I do recommend it for the most part. It also discusses, I think, something, a very serious medical reality in the African-American community, and I think it's good to read for that. But again, I wish Kate just had a little bit better character development. My fourth book is Devolution by Max Brooks. Brooks is probably most well known as the author of World War Z, although to me, I know him mainly as the son of Mel Brooks and Anne Bancroft. After a planned community in the Pacific Northwest, Green Loop, was apparently destroyed in a Sasquatch attack. This is a little bit different than Liz's Sasquatch book. There are no survivors, but a researcher voiced by Brooks on the audiobook puts together a lot of primary sources, including a journal of Green Loop resident Kate Holland, and also archived NPR interviews with Green Loop founder and a resident. If you take away the absurdity of the fact that it's about a Sasquatch attack, it really does read as a piece of nonfiction. The audiobook makes it especially real, especially the NPR interviews, which feature Terry Gross and Kai Rysdale playing themselves. I was driving and I was listening to Kai Rysdale interviewing the founder of Green Loop, who is narrated by Steven Weber, by the way. And I actually forgot for a minute I wasn't listening to Marketplace. And I became completely engrossed in it. And I thought, wow, that guy sounds just like the guy from Wings, because it was the guy from Wings. But anyway, I did enjoy this book. I was reading, the reviews have been mixed to this, and I know a couple of my colleagues on this call have read it, but I enjoyed it. It was an interesting audio. I do recommend it as an audio. I'm not sure I would have enjoyed it as much if I did it as a print book. And my last book is Class Act by Jerry Craft. This sequel, companion to New Kid, is every bit as delightful and thoughtful as the first one. Jordan Banks once again narrates and illustrates, but most of the focus is on Drew, who is on the cover here, juggling schoolwork and his friends. Drew, we met him in New Kid, as Jordan's friend and classmate. This book focuses on a lot of issues, including colorism, disparities in education, as well as what happens when our goals are different than those of our families and the people we love. Drew is a well-drawn, so to speak, graphic novel character. And as with New Kid, all the supporting characters are extremely well-rounded and nuanced. There is actually a lot of humor in this, despite also a lot of serious subject matters. I just can't recommend this series enough. I really hope Jerry Craft continues writing this series. And just as an aside, New Kid is actually the first graphic novel to win the Newbery Medal, which is very, very well deserved. And they're great books. I can't recommend them enough. But that is all for me. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Louise.
Thank you so much, Laura. I appreciate it. Let me just see if I can share my screen here. There are so many interesting books that I have to read now. Okay, let me see if I can find my screen here. Hold on one second. And I will be right with you guys. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm coming right out there, having some technical difficulties. I may go without my screen if it doesn't come up. I am so sorry, guys. You know what I might do is just speak without the screen for you. I'm so sorry. Can you guys see me okay? Yeah, so sorry. I'm gonna give it one more try. I think I'm in here now. I'm so sorry, guys. All right, apologies. We're going to start with The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. So let me tell you that I have read one book by Kristen Hanna before this, which is The Magic Hour, which I really enjoyed. What I enjoy about Kristen Hanna is she's quite the storyteller. She really is fabulous when it comes to storytelling. She really keeps you absorbed. She comes up with interesting plots, I think. This particular book, beautiful description about the wilds of Alaska. I personally have not been to Alaska, but this book really gives a lot of detail. It's taking place, by the way, in 1974, so we don't have cell phones, okay? There's no cell phone. So people who maybe are in a very cold, wild place, it's dangerous. They might not be able to make a phone call if something happens, like if a bear comes by and maybe wants to eat them or some such thing happens. And she does a beautiful job with that description. Another strength of this book is a mother-daughter relationship and the strength of their relationship, the importance and the complications of this bond between mother and daughter. The father and husband in this book, his name is Ernst. I have never heard of the name Ernst before. He is a Vietnam vet and he is very troubled and he's an alcoholic and he's abusive. So we've got an abusive father. We've got a mother who will not let him go. It's a dangerous situation. They're in Alaska because he had a friend in Vietnam who died and left him this shack that they have to fix up. A lot of strong women characters in this book, which I really like. The horrors of an abusive relationship are relayed here and the problems with somebody not letting go and the danger of that. The audiobook is beautifully narrated. Wonderful narration. Okay, so I have one small criticism about this book. It really starts off strong. I was totally absorbed in the story, but at some point I feel that you need to stop having bad things happen to people because you start to feel like you're in a soap opera. So that is my one criticism. I still think this is a really worthwhile book. I think there's a little too much grimness, especially right now in this time. Great storytelling though. A strong book, worthwhile reading. All right, On Chesil Beach by Ian McEwan. Ian McEwan is a great writer. You can't go wrong with him. This is a beautiful and simple story. It's a novella, and there are no wasted words. Every word is beautifully written. One of our main characters in On Chesil Beach, Florence Pontig, is a musician, and she plays in a string quartet. She's very talented. She's obsessed with making the music be perfect. She's the lead violin in the quartet. And the writing is like perfect music too. The words are just beautiful, and we're focused on this one night. The first sentence of this book, they were young, educated, and both virgins on this, their wedding night, and they lived in a time when conversations about sexual difficulties was plainly impossible. This is taking place in 1962, so we're on the verge of a kind of a sexual revolution, but the mores of these two, they're not quite there, and they're both virgins. They don't really have good communication skills. There are some old-fashioned ideas about women. There's a hint about something in this novel that is important that I don't want to give away. It's wonderful. It's perfectly written. It's sad, but it's beautiful and it's touching and lovely, lovely book. Okay, here's a very serious book called We Don't Eat Our Classmates. I think that's really good advice. I mean, it's important to teach your children correctly. I don't remember ever telling my son that he shouldn't eat his classmates. Luckily he didn't, but I kind of wish I'd told him that. Our main character is Penelope Rex. And even though she gets 300 tuna sandwiches for the first day of school, well, the classmates look so tasty. The classmates are humans, by the way, and they just look kind of to fall back on Liz's novel, and they just look delicious, and so she wants to eat them. And her teacher, Mrs. Noodleman, is not happy about that and makes her spit them out. So there goes that idea. And she learns from Walter the goldfish, who thinks she looks delicious and bites her, that maybe she shouldn't be eating her classmates. This is hilarious. Children's literature is so rich. I am not an expert, but even when my son was little, there were so many delightful books. And this is one that I really recommend for young children, story time, good for parent and child. Okay, and my last book, this is a newer novel. This is actually the first novel from Chelsea Beaker, and I want to see more by her. This is also a strong mother-daughter relationship novel. We've got a mother here who also seems to go for abusive men. And we have a cult, a Christian cult. Has anyone ever heard of one of those? So we have one here in this town in California where there's a drought. And they used to do very well with raisins, but now there's a drought, and there's this sham preacher who's saying that he can bring the rain, but people have to do certain things, and it's awful. And it's about a strong woman character, again, who needs to sort of grow, accept the way her mother is, understands that it's a cult, and needs to sort of overcome this whole thing. I think it's a timely book. It's a beautifully written book. This is a really masterful writer. I love it. I loved this book. I was upset when it was over. That to me is the mark of a great book. I just wanted to keep reading the beautiful prose. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Greg. Thank you all for listening.
All right, thank you. Let me load my screen, folks. Bear with me 1 second. Share screen. And let's do this. Play from start. All right. Hello, folks. So like Liz, I am really into horror. So October is one of my favorite times of year to read horror, though to be fair, I read it every month. So this is kind of like same as usual, except now I'm a little bit more excited. By the way, Liz, that book you suggested, I probably shouldn't read that. It's probably going to traumatize me, but I'm going to read it anyway. So thank you. Let's go with the books that I've been reading, though. First off, I read Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Monroe Garcia, and I have to say, out of all the books I've read these past couple of weeks, this is by far my favorite. Long story short, it's about a Mexican socialite by the name of Naomi, who's growing up in Mexico City in the 1950s. And she's having the time of her life. She's going to parties, studying whatever she wants, living the good life, until she finds out that her beloved cousin Catalina has written her a note saying that she's in serious trouble. Recently, Catalina married into a very wealthy English family who lived just outside of the city in a manor called High Place. And at first, everything seemed to be going well, but now she's saying that she feels like she's been poisoned. She's having some serious issues. She's hearing voices, and her mental health has clearly plummeted. So Naomi's father asks Naomi to investigate and see what's going on. And suffice to say, High Place is pretty much, it's what Downton Abbey eventually would succumb to if it didn't have any money or anything like that. It is a once glorious place that's falling to ruins, and there is a noble family there, and they're just not doing so well. So there's some suspicion that they married Catalina for her money. It is a very, as the name implies, it's a really, it's Gothic horror, and there's a lot of, and it focuses on a lot of issues like sexism, racism, classism. Because of this family, several times you get the impression that while they look down on people that are not there, who are not male or Anglo-Saxon or anything like that, they're also simultaneously dependent on this to get some, on others to get their money, and there's some resentment on it. I don't really want to say anything else about it, because the less you know about this story, the better. It's definitely one of those books where you think it's going to go one way, and then somehow during the middle of it, you're like, oh my God, did not see that coming. That's terrifying. So it's, I really like Naomi as a character, though. She's very intelligent. She does not take a lot of nonsense from folks, and she clearly loves her cousin, sorry. And it's just something I would really recommend. They're going to be apparently making a series on Hulu about it, which I'm very pumped. So try to see this as soon as you can. Next up, Home Before Dark, about another supposedly haunted house. I'm having a theme here. Suffice to say, this book focuses on a woman by the name of Maggie. She is an architect or a renovator who pretty much, about 25 years ago, her dad and mom moved to this like fancy house in Vermont called Bainbury Hall. They were trying to fix it up. And what happened is they only made it 20 days and they left the house fleeing for their lives. And the father wrote a very successful nonfiction book about how supposedly they encountered a malevolent ghost and it tried to kill them, and they managed to escape. They pretty much, with the exception of what that book that her father wrote said, they never really talked about it. It was very taboo for the family. It made them a ton of money, but it also drove the family apart. Like the mom and dad got divorced. She has a very strained relationship with her family. And 25 years later, after her father has passed, she finds out she inherited the house. So she goes back to Vermont to try to understand what the mystery was, what the secrecy of it is. And what I really like about the book is it's divided into you're really reading two novels. You're reading Maggie's perspective, where she's going back to the house in Vermont, figuring out what's going on. And then once you're done with that chapter, you will jump to another chapter, which is actually the father's retelling of what happened that night. So when you are looking at the book, you will be, when you're looking at the book, you're like, you'll be seeing like an event that happened where it's like, oh, okay, this supposedly a ghost did this. And then you'll look at Maggie's perspective and it's like, oh, it happened this way. It's kind of I liked it. I wasn't as blown away by the ending as I was with Mexican Gothic. I don't know if I should fault the book on that, because I read these two back to back and I feel like they were going for two very different stories. Again, the less you know is better. On a petty note, I listened to this book on on CD, and the narrator was making all these references to Vermont, which is where I went to college, mentions a lot about Burlington, which is really cool. And she does a great job, and I love all the references and stuff, but when the Vermonters speak, she has them speak like they're from Boston, and Vermonters do not sound like Bostonians. They pronounce their R's, but that's just me. That's just me being petty. Other than that, great job. Next up, another thing about being trapped at home, I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. This is kind of considered like a classic among American horror. We read this for the Science Fiction and Fantasy Book Club. And what essentially it's about is this gentleman by the name of Robert Melville, whose house he's, for all intent and purposes, as far as he knows, the last living person alive. Every night, vampires like rise by like the hundreds and like assault his house, and he pretty much has to pray for the dawn. And then when dawn hits and the vampires are asleep, he goes out and starts hunting them while they're sleeping. And it's, I like it. It's a very well done book. I think that it is, some of the language is very outdated though, being written, I believe, is either in the 60s or the 70s. And some of the language really has not held up well, in my opinion. But when it comes to the terms of like isolation, desperation, descending into just sheer depressive states of loneliness, it is really spot on. And also it's kind of interesting to read because even though this is technically a vampire book, it was definitely one of the major inspirations for the zombie genre, because these things are just kind of like, there's nothing really graceful or seductive about them. They're just hungry and they want to eat people. I would give it, it's a short read. I would give it a shot if you're interested. Uprooted. I decided I was going to take a break from horror, surprise, surprise, and go into some fantasy by Naomi Novik. Now, Uprooted kind of takes place in a, in kind of like an Eastern European fantasy setting. And there's this woman by the name of Aneshka. She lives kind of in this like cool little village that is on the edge of a forest. And this forest is, well, if you've read like Grimm's fairy tales, you don't go into the woods because bad things are in the woods. This case, the woods itself is actively trying to get you. Like this thing, it's funny enough, even though I was trying to get away from horror, the woods is in this book is one of the most terrifying like fantasy creatures that's come up. It is a forest that actively hates people and tries to get them. And the only thing that's stopping this woods from like overgrowing all of like humanity is there's this wizard by the name of the Dragon, and he lives in this tower and he keeps it at bay. But the price that this village pays for not getting swallowed up by the woods is that every 10 years, the townsfolk have to offer like a girl into his service that he takes into the tower. She stays with him for 10 years, and then she's allowed to leave, and the cycle repeats itself. So kind of like, it sounds a little bit like Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, though the person is not hurt, the girl who goes with the wizard is not hurt, or anything creepy that happens, which is like good, but you're also wondering why the heck is this person hanging with the wizard? So Anishka's kind of like not exactly a very, everybody thinks that she's not going to be taken because she's not really anything special. She's kind of a klutz, she's dirty, all this stuff. And so clearly she's not going to be the one who's chosen. That, is never going to happen in a fantasy story. And well, you can put two and two together and she does. So it's pretty much about her dynamic, about why she's been taken, what's the secret of the woods, why is this wizard doing what he's doing, and it just kind of unravels itself and reveals, and it's a really cool story. But in addition to, but I think the coolest part about it is that it's really just kind of a focus on like a friendship between two young women, and what they'll do to help each other out. And I mean, there's a romance in here, but the relationship between like Aneshka and her best friend is really the theme, is the high point of the story. And it's fantastic. I can't recommend this enough. And last, definitely not least, is The Witcher, or The Last Wish. So yeah, Netflix has recently done this series, The Witcher by Andrei Spassky. Sorry if I mispronounced that. And I figured I should give it a look because I actually, it also has a video game based off of it that I really like. And I realized I never read this books and I felt like a bad librarian. So it's pretty much about this guy by the name of Geralt. He's a professional monster hunter, and he goes around trying to stop monsters from eating people. But also, when you look further into it, he's more kind of like a park ranger in the sense that, yeah, he stops monsters from eating people, but he also tries to stop people from killing magical creatures that just really kind of want to be left alone. And there's a lot of moral gray area in this. It's a bunch of short stories, and each of one of them is kind of a deconstruction of like a fairy tale, which I thought was kind of cool. I liked it. It's not usually what I read, but I'm glad I did, and I'd give another shot to. I'd check out the next one, which I've put in my queue. One of the funnier things I do kind of like is how it's a deconstruction is, for example, everybody knows there's a troll that lives under a bridge, and when you go across the bridge and you don't pay the toll, he's going to eat you. So Geralt is going to go kill the troll, but then the townsfolk are like, what are you doing? Leave him alone. He's like, well, isn't he taking coins? And he's like, yeah, the troll takes our coins and then he fixes the bridge, and that saves us a lot in taxes. So, he's doing us a service, and it's like, just stop doing that. So poor troll. In any case, yeah, that's what I got. And thank you.
Thank you, Greg. And I'm going to change this to gallery view so we can have a conversation. Those are all great. I just wanted to, we got a couple of comments in the chat. One is one of our watchers is, they had actually mentioned this last month, but they are definitely reading Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine for their book club. That was, I believe, Louise, sorry, I believe that was one of yours last month. So I asked them to please come on Monday and share what they think of that book. And then we had a question about what school. So in the book Parachutes, for the book that I talked about, what school, it says what school is hinted, and I think that's asking what school is it based on. That's a great question. I don't know. The book takes place in East Covina, which there's a Covina and a West Covina. I do not believe there actually is an East Covina. I don't see a reference to it. So I'm assuming it's based on either Covina or West Covina, and there are several private schools in both those areas, both right outside of Los Angeles. So from what I understand with interviews, I think it's an amalgamation of various different schools. And I think, unfortunately, probably the situation is all too common at several of them. So that is a great question. Sorry if I don't have an exact answer for it. So great presentation as always. I'm always intrigued. Liz, I have to admit, a lot of your books kind of scared me a little, although I'm intrigued by that last one. I think I have to be in a right frame of mind, but I'm overusing the word intrigued, but I very much am by that book. Louise, I'm glad to know we should not eat our classmates. I think that is very good advice. My parents did not tell me that when I went to school, but you can't go wrong. It's not bad advice, certainly. So, how adorable is that cover? So cute. Greg, yeah, I'm very, I'm very intrigued by the Witcher series. I've not watched the Netflix series yet. I just want to talk quick, just because a couple of us did do Sasquatch books, which is kind of interesting, maybe because of the time of year. And Liz and Greg, I think you both read Devolution, is that right? I'm curious what your thoughts were, because both of you, I feel like that's more both of your genres, a lot more than mine usually, and I really enjoyed it. But a lot of the reviews did not, and so I'm wondering if I'm an outlier.
I enjoyed it. I have to be honest, so I have like an entire shelf in my Goodreads account that's just books about Sasquatch, because like I went through a period where I tried to only read Sasquatch books. Anyways, the past is a foreign country, for me at least. And I almost wish that there had been more Sasquatch. in the book, I don't want to give anything away in case people are watching it, but while I enjoyed it, if I was breaking it down into subtypes of Sasquatch fiction, which I could speak on at greater length in the future, it wasn't the subgenre that I would have preferred given the overall premise of the book.
I would say that I liked it. I thought it was entertaining. It wasn't my favorite book. The thing that I thought was kind of with Max Brooks, like books, one of the things I think that's interesting about it is how he takes something. He takes some like a very silly subject, because let's be honest, it's a very silly subject, and he makes it sound so serious. Like this is such a grave thing. Like he's talking about survival scenarios, desperate what people will do like to survive in such like catastrophes, and he will do like research to the point where you're almost like, wow, if it wasn't just, if this wasn't just so ridiculous, I would take it like it's almost, I would say like this is a matter of grave importance. So I've always been impressed by that. I guess I did like a lot of the themes on about how nature is scary, and we as people don't have the right to like, you know, shoot it up or destroy it. But on the other hand, you know, the big cougar isn't there to pet. You know, it will eat you if you don't respect that it's a wild animal. And I like that. Even if I think sometimes it can be a little long-winded, but all in all, thumbs up.
And Louise, have you read it? Because you were nodding along. So did you know that? Or
No, unfortunately, I have not, but it's very interesting.
yeah, I liked it. I was something I read about it said it's supposed to be a commentary on the COVID-19 pandemic, which I don't buy that completely. It was published in June, but it was announced like in early March. I remember I attended virtually a lot of publishers' book buzzes, and I heard them announcing it at one in March. So it was not written during the pandemic. You certainly probably can read it that way, as with any book. You can probably read anything into a lot of books, but I do not believe that was the intention of the book. And I found that interesting when I read that. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I picked up an advanced reader copy at a conference in February. So okay, it was like so fully written. So I can kind of see how it could be like squished into being kind of a COVID isolation pandemic. And I actually started reading it right when the shutdown started happening. And I was like, I can't read about people being isolated right now. I've been trapped in my house for 2 days. And here we are 7 months later of being in our homes. So anyways.
Interesting. And Louise, just one. So I know off air, I was curious what you thought of The Great Alone, because I read it about a year or so ago. So it sounds like you really enjoyed it. I definitely thought it was very plot driven. I thought, but what did you just think of the description of Alaska?
That's what I thought was really great. I mean, I think that she did a beautiful job. Apparently, the author herself has gone to Alaska, camped in Alaska, knows people in Alaska. So I thought that was beautiful about it. The description of how the wildness and the beauty and the danger. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we have about 15 minutes or so. And I know we like to talk about movies and TV shows we've been watching. I know, Greg, you've been doing sort of your own marathon. I don't know if you want to talk about that and what that's been about.
Oh boy. Yeah, I'm going to be become like a vampire guy. So, you know, the world's been a little stressful. So I decided in order to de-stress, I would just distract myself and watch like a vampire movie for every day of October, just for Halloween. And I have both loved it and regretted it at the same time. There's a lot of vampire movies out there. Did not realize that. I've watched Twilight. Never did that before. My wife told me I had to if I was going to do it. So I said, sure. It's I think it gets an unfair reputation as in being the worst movie ever. But then again, I've seen much worse. I mean, I've seen Cats, so the bar's pretty low. But it's a bad movie. There's no doubt about that. But it's a fun movie. There's vampire baseball. So yeah, that's a thing. I guess that my one complaint on it was I think it was the vampires did not sparkle enough. I thought that there were going to be sparkly vampires, and they just kind of shimmered. It's like, what's the deal? On a good movie, I would recommend Only Lovers Left Alive, starring Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton by Jim Jarmusch. That's a great movie. It's pretty much about like, okay, going back to Twilight, one of the things that annoyed me about it was that there are a bunch of immortal vampires and they decide that they're going to live in high school for the rest of their lives. That's terrible. Meanwhile, you have Tilda Swinton and Tom Hiddleston as in doing every awesome thing I can think imaginable. Like, because Tilda Swinton doesn't have to eat. She just packs a suitcase full of books. There's like an entire sequence where she's taking like every book that she reads, looking it over, putting it in there, and she just like packs 3 suitcases of it, which I think is most of our librarian dreams. I think that, they're often considered like Tom Hiddleston teaches himself how to like power a generator to do like a whole neighborhood. So that's really cool. And when they get angsty, it's not about like, woe is me as I'm a monster. It's more of a, humanity does a lot of cool stuff and it has a lot of potential, but it really does goof it up a lot, doesn't it? And it's just like, yeah, we kind of do. And, it's not really much of a plot. But if you watch a Jim Jarmusch movie, that's not how he does stuff. It's Tom is depressed, so Tilda comes over to cheer her husband up, and that's the movie. So it's really cool. It's different, and it's just about pretty people doing awesome stuff. Go ahead and watch it if you can. And John Hurt's in it, so that's always fun. He's Christopher Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe's a vampire, so yeah, go figure. And I saw Bly Manor. That was really cool on Netflix. If you like a haunted house movie story, you should see that.
Very cool. Yeah, Twilight. I'm not a Twilight person. I don't dislike it. I know I'm not one of. But when I was a teen librarian when the books were first published, and I did see it in the theater. The first two was in the theater with actually a couple of teenagers, and that was a really fun experience. There is one of my companions who I saw the movie with really was offended by the whole movie, the casting, everything about it. Was not at all what her vision was. But by the time I saw it with her, she had already seen it 3 times in the theater and had a notebook of everything that was wrong with it. And during our screening, she wrote down furiously everything that was wrong with it. It was awesome. I actually really, I thought it was amazing. So I feel like I can't watch them at home because I won't get the same experience. And it was just great hearing, there's a scene right in the movie where when he has the apple, looks just like the cover, and like everyone in the theater cheered. It was, it made basically something that I was not particularly enamored with, at least fun. But I don't ever need to see it again, or the next 2 movies, and I only read the first book, and I was like, oh, I get it. I have no issue with people liking it or the book itself, but it just wasn't my cup of tea, certainly. No. So cool. So congratulations for having seen that movie. And so how many more vampire movies do you have to go, or just is it so one every day of the month? So
one every day of the month. So October 31st will be the final one. They'll try to save a good one or something like that. Right. Or if I get tired, whatever works. It's how these things go. Yeah, I mean that movie did take quite a bit out of me though. But onward.
Yes. And Louise, do you have anything that you've seen recently you'd like to share?
Yes, I watched On Canopy, which the library subscribes to and you can get for free. I actually like Canopy a lot. I'm a big fan of Canopy. So on Canopy, I watched On Chesil Beach, the movie version. and it's fabulous. The movie is very true to the book, very true to the book. I didn't check to see if they consulted with Ian McEwan, but I feel like they must have because they did such a splendid job. The acting is lovely. I recommend it highly. Also, this is a while back, but I had read the book, The Miseducation of Cameron Post, which I love that book. And so I watched that also on Canopy, and they changed some details, but it was true to the heart of the book. It's worth seeing. It's worth reading the book and seeing the movie. Both are great. And then also on Canopy, I watched this crazy movie called Sordid Lives, and I really recommend it. It's hilarious. It's sordid. It's taking place in Texas. It's a kind of a dysfunctional family, which I tend to love dysfunctional family things. The grandmother dies. There is a nephew who is gay, and they put him in a psych ward because he's gay, which is crazy, but there it is. And he likes to imitate Tammy Wynette. He does it in the psych ward, and there's a psychiatrist who's trying to get him to not be gay, and the psychiatrist is crazy, and it's darkly funny. There's a woman who is really trying to quit smoking, but everybody talking about the death of the grandmother and arguing and about the gay people. And there's a gay nephew who comes back from Hollywood and decides to announce that he's gay, and everybody's dealing with it. I don't know if I'm doing justice to this movie, but it's hilarious. It's kind of wacky. It's got Beau Bridges, Olivia Newton-John is in it. There's a hilarious Thelma and Louise scene where these two women go into a bar and just, it's darkly funny. I really like it. It's good for this time because it's so silly and at the same time, it's about a serious issue where people don't accept that people are gay. They just don't accept it. So it is dealing with a true serious issue, but at the same time, it's darkly funny.
Who's in On Chesil Beach? I don't remember do you remember who the people are?
Oh, the character, I don't recognize the actors. I'd have to look them up.
No worries.
They do an excellent job. I can tell you that. It's really well done. First rate.
Cool. Yeah, and just, I just muted myself. For me, I've just been watching, I really like the show Insecure. I had watched the first 2 seasons earlier in 2020, which of course seems like 10 years ago now, as opposed to just 8 or 9 months ago. And I started season 3 about a week ago. For those who don't know, Insecure, it's created by comedian Issa Rae. She had a YouTube show, and that then became this show, and I just really like it. I really enjoy it. I think she's great. She's very funny. It really gives me an appreciation for LA, which is a city I've only been to a couple times, and also just being in the first 2.5 seasons, she's the only African-American employee at an organization that works with predominantly, works in schools, usually schools that are lower income, and she's usually mostly students of color, and it's just basically about how it is like her being the only Black employee at this organization. Is the meeting, they're really, the meetings are, they're great, just watching her with these meetings. And I just really like it. I think I love her. I really liked the movie Lovebirds that she was in, which got released streaming in the pandemic. That got mixed reviews, but I thought she was great in it. So, and she just hosted Saturday Night Live this past weekend, and we could have a conversation about whether that show still is funny or not. I think there's a lot of opinions about that, but I thought it was one of the better episodes I've seen in a while, and I think a lot of that was because of her hosting. So that's the show I'm not embarrassed about that I'm watching. The one that I am embarrassed about, but I'm admitting anyway on the internet, is I've been rewatching The Nanny. And Greg, I love your face there. And So The Nanny, for those who don't know, was a show that was on sort of the early to mid 90s. Fran Drescher plays a nanny for a family in New York City, and it didn't age terribly well, as most shows do not, but parts of it are still funny. Anyway, I'm rewatching it. I'm not going to do my Fran Drescher voice or anything. I was going to, and I decided that would be just too embarrassing. So, because there's only a new episode every Friday, I still am watching the Great British Baking Show or Great British Bake Off, depending if you're watching it here or in the UK. And it's very likable contestants this year. And the problem, I think I mentioned this last month, so we get new episodes on Friday. Netflix drops the new episode on Friday, but it airs Tuesday in the UK. And because most of my Twitter feed are people associated with the Great British Bake Off, I usually get spoiled. And I get so sad because it's such a likable group of contestants this year that I'm always sad when I see a spoiler. And I saw the spoiler for this week, and there's a siren, sorry. And there's a spoiler for this week, and I'm so sad because it's someone I like, but it always is someone I like. So, and then I'm watching as a companion show, Nadia's Time to Eat, who was a former winner from season whatever, because the numbered seasons are different depending on where you watch it. But Nadia was on one of my favorite seasons and one of my favorite contestants. And she, as I mentioned last month, hosts this cooking show for people in a hurry. And all the episodes have been dropped, but there aren't that many. So I watch basically my Friday now is watching the new episode of Great British Baking Show. And then I watch an episode of Nadia's Time to Eat. It's my very zen British cooking show experience, and I highly recommend it to anyone who has Netflix, which you can watch because we actually have Rokus at the library that have Netflix. So even if you don't subscribe, you can watch both shows. All right, any final thoughts before we sign off? All right, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to our patrons for watching. We had a lot of fun. Please, again, feel free to join us on Monday at 7 p.m. The Zoom link is on our website. Also, we will be on this channel next in November, and shoot, I don't have the date, but just join us here next month. And again, please stay, like and subscribe to our channel. We have so many great programs coming up, and you don't have to watch them live. That's the beauty of YouTube. You can watch them on demand. So yeah, so check it out and have a good afternoon. Everyone does the Zoom wave. Bye. Bye.